My thing when it comes to an objection is if you don't know what it is, you can't close it. So you better figure out what it is. And if you don't know how to get the answer and you don't know what to do with the answer, you better get training.
Yeah.
Too many people think selling is talking when selling is more listening than talking.
Yeah. Well, it's understanding, too. The listening has to lead to understanding. I mean, you really have to try and understand how do people think and how do they make decisions and how do you actually change their behavior. One of the big ideas that I learned a long time ago is people don't change their mind. But what people do is they make a new decision based on new information. And if you're going to be great at selling, you have to be good at figuring out how do you use words and language to get me to see that you're not really changing my mind, but boy, you're presenting me with new information that I got to have, and that will change my thinking about what I ought to be doing. So the way you do it is you say, look, I was calling on a physician one time with a product, and I was with a sales rep, and the sales rep says, Doctor, I understand you have 10 people on my competitor's product and none on mine. So he looked at me like she was a Martian, because that's not a great way to open a call. And I said to him, I said, well, that makes perfect sense to me. He said, well, I thought you worked for that company. I said, well, I do work for that company. Well, I consult with them, but still makes perfect sense to me. Mm-hmm. Well, why does it make sense to you? I said, well, I'll tell you why. I said, 9 months ago when these products came out, there was only 2 of them. People like you thought that it didn't matter which one to use. Both of them were great. Just pick one. I said, now I think people see it differently. Well, how do they see it? I said, well, I think people see that the products are similar, but they're not the same. I said, the real question is, what are the differences and when do they matter? I said, do you really have 10 people on the other product? Yeah, I do. And I said, well, let me ask you this question. Their label says 99% of patients will have a side effect. Our label says 100. Can you and I agree it's 100, that everybody's going to have a problem? Yeah. I said, okay, you got 10 people on the drug? Yeah. I said, of those 10 people, how many of them, if they have a side effect, and you already admitted they are going to have a side effect, how many of them, if they have a side effect, it'll be a real problem? I mean, a real problem. He said, 3. I said, well, those are people you should have put on our product. He said, why? And I explained to him what the difference was. He said, wow, I didn't know that. When I get him to see that people are changing their thinking, then that's new information to him. So he doesn't feel uncomfortable changing his mind. What he sees is the ability and the willingness of himself to adapt to a new idea. Using words and language that get people to see things in a different light, that say, hey, people are starting to see this differently, is a powerful way to change people's minds.